It began like so many ordinary evenings, yet beneath the surface, a quiet storm was already brewing. Sarah Collins sat in the dimly lit corner of her small apartment, scrolling endlessly through her phone. The blue light reflected off her pale face, highlighting the deep hollows under her eyes. Friends and colleagues had begun to whisper that she wasn't herself anymore, but Sarah shrugged it off, telling everyone she was simply tired. The truth, however, was far darker. Her obsession with a man named Daniel Reeves was eating her alive. Daniel wasn't just a passing crush or an innocent infatuation. He was her colleague, her neighbor, and the object of an all-consuming fixation that Sarah could neither control nor deny. Every glance he gave another woman felt like a betrayal. Every laugh he shared that didn't include her cut her like a knife. Sarah was convinced that if she couldn't have Daniel, no one else should. Daniel, on the other hand, had no idea of the dangerous trap closing in around him. He was the kind of man who turned heads without trying, a natural charmer with a warm smile and easy laugh. He had recently begun dating Emily Carter, a bright young woman whose kindness and energy lit up every room she entered. Emily had only known Daniel for a few months, but their connection was strong, the kind of whirlwind romance that leaves two people dizzy in the best way. She knew Sarah from work and always felt uneasy around her. Something about the way Sarah lingered, the way her eyes followed Daniel across the office, sent chills down her spine. But Emily brushed it off, not wanting to seem paranoid or insecure. She couldn't have imagined the danger that was already spiraling toward her. Sarah's jealousy festered quietly at first. She spent nights stalking Daniel's social media, analyzing every post, every tagged picture, every comment Emily left on his page. She memorized Emily's schedule, watched her from a distance when she left for work in the mornings, and even followed her to the grocery store once, her pulse racing as she trailed behind, imagining what it would feel like to confront her face to face. Sarah had never been particularly bold, but this obsession gave her a dark kind of courage. In her mind, Emily wasn't just an obstacle, she was a thief who had stolen the life Sarah believed was meant to be hers. Daniel and Emily's relationship, meanwhile, continued to grow. On weekends, they went on hikes, took late-night drives just to talk under the stars, and planned a future together that felt more real with every passing day. Daniel didn't notice how Sarah's conversations with him were changing. She had started asking pointed questions, feigning interest in Emily's life while carefully extracting details about where she lived, what she liked to do, and when she would be alone. Daniel, too trusting for his own good, never saw through it. To him, Sarah was just a slightly lonely coworker who craved companionship. He didn't realize he was feeding her the very ammunition she would later use. Emily began noticing small, unsettling signs that something wasn't right. A strange car parked outside her apartment at odd hours, her mailbox rifled through, her phone ringing with silent calls in the middle of the night. She mentioned it once to Daniel, laughing it off as coincidence, but her smile was forced. Deep down, she knew someone was watching. Sarah, meanwhile, was unraveling. Her journal, hidden beneath her bed, was filled with page after page of fantasies about a life with Daniel, fantasies where Emily didn't exist. The more she wrote, the more convinced she became that this wasn't just desire, it was destiny. And destiny, she told herself, sometimes required bold and brutal action. One late evening, Sarah sat in her car outside Emily's apartment. The street was quiet, lined with flickering street lamps that buzzed against the darkness. Sarah's hands trembled against the steering wheel, a knife sitting heavy in the glove compartment beside her. She hadn't planned to go this far, at least not yet. But obsession has a way of accelerating time, pushing boundaries faster than reason can catch up. She pictured Daniel's face, his smile, the way his hand rested gently on Emily's back whenever they walked together, and her jealousy twisted into rage. "It should be me," she whispered to herself. "It was always supposed to be me." Inside her apartment, Emily felt a strange unease settle over her as she prepared for bed. She double-checked the locks, pulled the curtains tightly shut, and tried to quiet the nervous flutter in her chest. She didn't know why she felt so watched, so vulnerable, but her instincts were screaming at her. What she didn't realize was that just outside, in the dark, Sarah was watching, planning, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. The night was still, but danger was coiled tight, ready to snap. Sarah Collins had always told herself that she wasn't dangerous, only misunderstood. But the longer she sat in her car outside Emily Carter's apartment, the more those lies unraveled. She watched Emily laugh through the window, pacing back and forth while on the phone, her gestures animated and light. That happiness was a blade twisting inside Sarah's chest. She imagined what it must feel like to be loved so effortlessly, to be chosen, to be free of the torment that clung to her like a second skin. The more she imagined it, the more she hated Emily for having it. Sarah's hands shook as she traced Emily's outline through the glass with her finger, as though drawing a target. A storm brewed in her mind, her thoughts unraveling into whispers that told her it was only fair, only natural, that Emily should pay for flaunting a life Sarah could never have. The following days only deepened Sarah's obsession. She trailed Emily without ever being noticed, following her to coffee shops, bookstores, and late-night dinners with friends. Sarah studied every move, every laugh, every interaction like a scientist cataloging her subject. But beneath her fixation was a gnawing rage, a hatred that pulsed stronger each time she saw Emily smile. Sarah began scribbling in her journal at night, filling pages with angry declarations and dark fantasies, each word scratching across the paper like a confession. Her reality blurred with the obsession. She no longer saw Emily as a person but as an obstacle, a wall standing between herself and the love she thought she deserved. With each passing night, the thought of removing that obstacle became less horrifying and more intoxicating. By the time Sarah finally shut her journal one late evening, she knew the decision was made. Emily Carter would not live much longer. For Emily Carter, life was ordinary, even predictable. She had no idea that her every move was being documented by someone who saw her not as a friend or even as a stranger, but as prey. On a warm Saturday morning, Emily met her best friend at a small cafe on 5th Street, unaware that Sarah Collins sat just 2 tables away, her eyes fixed on her with unrelenting focus. Sarah stirred her coffee slowly, not tasting a drop, memorizing every detail: Emily's laugh, the way she leaned in close when she spoke, the sparkle in her eyes when she talked about her new job. Each little expression felt like a personal attack, mocking Sarah with a life she couldn't touch. As Emily waved goodbye to her friend and stepped outside, Sarah followed, her pace steady and measured. She remained far enough not to be noticed, but close enough to never lose sight. Emily walked through the bustling streets, stopping to pet a dog, pausing to check her phone, completely unaware that danger trailed her footsteps. Sarah's mind was no longer simply observing, it was planning. She studied Emily's routes, her favorite places, her patterns. And in her mind, each one became a vulnerability, an opening, a way in. Sarah began to imagine not just following Emily but controlling her, silencing her, erasing her existence altogether. By the time the sun dipped behind the horizon and Emily disappeared into her apartment, Sarah stood in the shadows across the street, whispering to herself words she could no longer restrain. Soon, very soon. Emily Carter never suspected that her life was unraveling, thread by thread, while she carried on with her daily routine. Every morning she walked to the subway, earbuds in, music drowning out the world. Every evening she returned to her small apartment, oblivious to the eyes watching from across the street. To her, the city was alive and vibrant. To Sarah Collins, it was a hunting ground. Sarah's obsession had evolved into something darker. She no longer just followed, she documented. In her small, dimly lit apartment, walls were plastered with photographs of Emily. Shots of her leaving the gym, browsing at the bookstore, even buying groceries. Each picture was dated, labeled, organized with chilling precision. It was a shrine to control, a twisted diary of a life that wasn't her own. Sarah whispered Emily's name as she pinned the latest photo, her fingers brushing across it as if it were something sacred. One night, Sarah went further than she ever had before. Disguised in a dark hoodie, she crept to Emily's building and waited until someone buzzed the door open. Slipping inside unnoticed, she climbed the stairs slowly, her footsteps silent. At Emily's door, she pressed her hand against the cool wood, her breath trembling. Just inches separated her from the woman who consumed her every thought. She bent down, placing a small envelope under the door. Inside was a handwritten note that read, "I see you. I always see you." Emily discovered it the next morning. At first she laughed nervously, thinking it must be a prank. But as she reread the words, a strange unease settled in her chest. She glanced around her apartment, the once comforting space now feeling foreign, vulnerable. For the first time, Emily locked her windows, double-checked the deadbolt, and pulled the curtains shut. What she didn't realize was that across the street, Sarah was smiling, watching the curtains close, satisfied that her presence was finally being felt. Emily tried to dismiss the note as nothing more than a cruel prank, but it gnawed at her throughout the day. At work, she found herself glancing over her shoulder, checking reflections in computer screens and windows, half expecting to see someone staring back at her. She told herself it was paranoia, but deep down she knew something wasn't right. That night, she confided in her neighbor, Daniel Hayes, a quiet but observant man who lived 2 doors down. Daniel listened carefully as she showed him the envelope. His brow furrowed and he immediately recognized the danger. "This isn't a joke, Emily. Someone is watching you," he said firmly. He urged her to report it to the police, but Emily hesitated. What would she even tell them? That she found a vague, unsettling note? It sounded flimsy, almost embarrassing. Reluctantly, she agreed to wait and see if anything else happened. But Sarah was already escalating. Watching Emily's unease gave her a perverse satisfaction. One evening, as Emily returned from work, she noticed something chilling. Her apartment door was unlocked. Her pulse quickened, panic clawing at her chest. She stepped inside cautiously, every corner suddenly suspicious. The apartment looked normal at first glance, but when she entered her bedroom, her stomach dropped. On her pillow sat another envelope. This one contained a single Polaroid photograph of Emily sleeping, taken from within her own bedroom. Emily screamed and dropped the photo, her entire body trembling. Daniel rushed in moments later after hearing her cries. When he saw the picture, his face went pale. "Someone was in here," he whispered, his voice heavy with dread. That night, Daniel insisted she stay at his apartment, locking every door and window. Emily sat on his couch, clutching a blanket tightly, her mind racing with fear. For the first time, she realized she wasn't safe anywhere. Not in her home, not in the city, maybe not even with someone she trusted. And outside, somewhere in the shadows, Sarah watched the darkened apartment window, a small, satisfied smile curving her lips. The game had only just begun. Emily couldn't sleep that night in Daniel's apartment. Every sound outside made her flinch, the creak of pipes, the hum of a passing car, even the wind brushing against the windows. Daniel tried to reassure her, promising that she was safe, but the unease gnawed at her chest like a living thing. By morning, Emily made a decision. She took the Polaroid and the letters straight to the police. Finally, the threat felt too real to ignore. The detective on duty, a tired man with sharp eyes, studied the evidence carefully. "Whoever this is, they've been inside your home. This is more than harassment, it's obsession," he told her gravely. They promised increased patrols near her building, but Emily knew the truth. Police presence wouldn't stop whoever was doing this. That evening, back in her own apartment, Emily forced herself to regain control. She locked every door, closed every window, and sat in silence, waiting. Her nerves were stretched to their limit, but she was determined not to be a victim anymore. Hours ticked by, and just when fatigue began to cloud her mind, she heard it. A faint scrape against the window. Her body froze. Slowly, she turned her head and her blood turned to ice. A shadow moved outside her bedroom window. Emily grabbed her phone and whispered Daniel's number, but before she could hit call, the window latch clicked. The glass slid open with an agonizing squeal. A figure in black slipped inside. The room was suffocating with silence until Emily gasped, and the intruder stopped. The hood fell back. It wasn't some faceless stranger. It was Sarah Collins. Emily's voice broke. "What? Why are you doing this?" Sarah's eyes glowed with an unsettling mixture of rage and satisfaction. "Because you took everything," she whispered. "The life I wanted, the friends, the love. You never even noticed me. But I noticed you, every single day." Sarah stepped closer, knife glinting in her hand. Emily backed into the corner, heart hammering. Just as Sarah raised the blade, the door burst open. Daniel stormed in, wielding a baseball bat. With a roar, he lunged at Sarah, knocking the knife from her hand. The two struggled violently on the floor, shadows thrashing against the dim light. Emily, trembling but resolute, grabbed the fallen knife. For a moment, she stood paralyzed, the weight of choice in her hands. Then, as Sarah tried to pin Daniel down, Emily surged forward, driving Sarah away with a scream of raw terror and fury. The fight ended as quickly as it began. Sarah lay subdued, restrained until police sirens wailed outside. Emily collapsed into Daniel's arms, shaking but alive. Days later, as she packed her belongings to leave the apartment for good, Emily glanced at the Polaroid one last time. The girl in the photo was fragile, unaware, and hunted. But now she was different, stronger, hardened by survival. Still, as she closed her suitcase, a chill ran down her spine. Obsession like Sarah's didn't disappear overnight. Behind bars or not, Emily knew the story wasn't over. Not really.